It was a long time ago. I was at Faith Baptist. I was a deacon. And I got a phone call real late at night to pray for a family that was facing a heavy crisis, and that was Bill and Sandy Walker. And they went through a very tough moment in time. And you know what? I saw, ever since I've known them, great faith. I've seen it demonstrated. God rewards great faith. He does it. And you know how he does it? He does it in your life. And he demonstrates it. And I tell you what, I've seen it demonstrated by knowing his son, and actually his other sons, but also his daughter. His daughter taught me a lot about faith. I told you this before, but she told me, hey, I need 6 months. I want to be going to, I think it was India. I'm getting a little. And I said, yeah, right. And she said, the Lord's called me to India. And me and Pastor Eric was there, and we're figuring, yeah, it's a good kid. She'll be there in 2 or 3 years. She was there. The Lord provided. She taught me about great faith. After she was in India through Crew in, Ministries, the Lord called her to go to Thailand. And that's where she's been for the last 3 years, right, hon? So she is back, not because she really wanted to, but because mainly she has to renew her license. She has to teach so much time in the States. So she had to come back because she teaches special needs. So she's back here for a while. We're very thankful. I know her heart's kind of pressed between the two. Kind of like Paul, he wanted to be at the Philippians, like we've been discussing, but also he wanted to be with God. So she, in her heart, she'd like to be at her school, but she also has a need to be here. So anyway, today she's going to present and just talk about what the Lord's done in the last few years with her. Okay? So at this time, we're going to watch a short video, and then we're going to bring you up. Okay?
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay, good. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Samantha Walker, and I was serving in Asia for the last 5.5 years. Today I'll kind of give a little update of the last location I was at, which was in Thailand for 3.5 years. So I just wanted to, with Cru, I should say that, with Campus Crusade for Christ. So first of all, I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity to speak. I want to thank you for those who partnered with me, who have journeyed with me, who've written me encouraging emails, for those who have really given through church donations and just really been a part of my ministry. I couldn't have done it without you, and I want you to know how grateful I am. So as some of you guys know, I'm ending, like Sony said, my time with Cru, and I would have loved to have stayed, but God definitely closed the door, and so I'll be teaching in Ohio, and I feel hopeful for what God will do here, so that's exciting too. All right. Today I wanted to touch on 3 things. 1, I wanted to give you a mission update. You saw some pictures. I wanted to discuss the transition process, which I think is probably not super commonly talked about. And I also wanted to share with you how it's truly just all about God. So, all right, I have a clicker. I don't know. Let's see how this goes. All right, first I wanted to tell you a story about my student Jake. So you saw pictures in the video. This is one of my students. So this is a cool story. As a lot of you guys probably know, I spent the last 3 years serving in Thailand at an international school called Grace International School, or GIS. And I was the special education teacher and the reading specialist there. So I got to really help. The school is made up of 80% missionary kids and 20% national Thai staff who mostly do not know the Lord. And so it's been a really fun mix of loving on not only missionary kids and supporting their parents to do all these ministries all over Asia, but also loving on these Thai students as well and getting to talk to them about Jesus as well. So it's been a pretty cool experience. So a couple cool stories. One is my student Jake. So his family was serving full-time in China as missionaries, and then they had Jake, who has autism. And so they're praying about what they're supposed to do. And I don't know how much you know about China, but it's very, very closed door. You have to be very careful what you say. Most of my friends have been interrogated, blacklisted. It's pretty intense. And so they had a lot of stuff that they had to do in order to be able to minister to Chinese people, but they felt called to Chinese people. And once they had Jake, who had autism, they prayed about it, and they felt God eventually leading them to Thailand. And they're like, what is in Thailand, you know? They go to Thailand, and so what's so cool is Grace, they looked everywhere for a special ed teacher, and there's very, very, very few in all of Asia, actually. I think there's only 2 in Thailand, the last time I looked it up, so it's pretty wild. And we have 2 at our school, and I wasn't even counting them. So they're looking for special ed teacher. There's none. And their mom just starts homeschooling Jake, and then her other boy, her other son, went to our school, Grace International School, my school. And so they make sure I say the right things. So basically they're homeschooling Jake, and then the next year I came. And so I was able to teach Jake all 3 years that I was there. And before I came, there hadn't been a special ed teacher in a long time. And so it was just a really big gift for them, but also for me to be a part of their life. And now what they couldn't have known is that since moving to Thailand, all these Chinese people have migrated to Thailand because from certain parts of China, it's cheaper in Thailand than certain parts of China. And so all these Chinese are moving to Thailand, which is spiritually open, even though it's almost 100% Buddhist. It's spiritually open. You can believe whatever you want to believe. And so they can openly minister and love on the Chinese people in Thailand without any fear of the government. And so it's been pretty cool to watch their ministry as well. Another story is my student Ben and Levi, which I know we have a Ben and Levi brothers here, but these are brothers, and they grew up in India. So Levi's in 3rd grade and Ben's in 5th grade. So they grew up in India. Parents are serving full time there, and Levi, who was in 3rd grade, had some reading and attention disabilities, and then Ben was in 5th grade, and Mom was homeschooling him because his disabilities were more severe. And they found out Levi was physically abused in the schools that he was in the Indian school, which is pretty common in honor-shame cultures. There's a lot of physical and verbal abuse. But as parents prayed about it with tears, and also the boys were just really struggling academically. And so parents prayed about it with tears, and they felt God calling them to Thailand. And again, they're like, what's in Thailand? They had no hope of finding a special ed teacher because there are just so few in Asia. But once they got to Thailand, they discovered GIS, my school, and now their boys are in this safe, loving environment, and they're soaring academically. So I've been able to teach both boys, and it's just been really fun to play a part. And the family is still able to serve in India, but he's in a leadership role, so he can work remotely and then take trips when he needs to. And so their family is thriving more than they ever have in their. They've been overseas for about 20 years, and they're thriving more than they ever have. So while I was so blessed to have worked with, I could tell you so many cool stories, but while I was blessed to work with so many fun students, God also gave me the opportunity to disciple some girls as well. And so I wanted to share with you two girls that I met. So Kristen was one of the girls. Some of you know, those of you who get my newsletters, my first year in Thailand was really hard, really hard. I cried myself to sleep every night for a year and a half. That was the worst year of my life. I think I gave a talk right after I got back, which I'm sure was very emotional. That was a really hard year. But the second year, I teamed up with another girl, and we said, you know what, we didn't really get welcomed very well when we came in, and so we said, what if we team up and we really love on the girls who come this year? We really love on the new teachers at Grace. And so we teamed up and we met with the new girls, and one of the girls I met with was Kristen. And honestly, I just took her out to coffee, and it just was such a sweet moment. She's like, Sam, she had just landed in Thailand a few weeks ago, and she said, Sam, I don't even know what I'm doing here. She goes, I became a Christian a year ago. She goes, I don't know how to pray or share my faith or read the Bible. She goes, what am I doing here? So she told me she signed up for a 2-week mission trip. And then she signed up for a 2-week mission trip, and then she felt God was prompting her to do 2 years. And so she said yes. And so she's there. And I just felt so honored to be able to, and I prayed about it, and I said, oh, God, please, can I disciple this girl? Like, she's brave. She loves you. She doesn't know all these things yet, but she loves you, and that's all that you need, you know? And I prayed about it and asked her, and she was so excited. And so for the last 2 years, I discipled Kristen, and it has been so amazing. Honestly, yeah, we talked about how to pray, how to share our faith, how to read the Bible. She went from never reading the Bible to reading it every day. Really reads it, gets up early, walks around her neighborhood, puts her audio Bible in, and she's so excited. And she teamed up with one of my other disciples, Linda, and they coached the high school volleyball girls at Grace this year. And then this year they shared their vision with me. They said, Sam, will you pray with us? This year we hope to disciple some of the girls on the volleyball team. And I'm so proud of them, honestly. They're very shy, and I'm so proud of them. And later, Kristen actually took a position at her church. She goes to an international church in Thailand, and she's now the head. She's 25. She's now the head of all the children's ministry at the whole church. Isn't that crazy? I just think God is just moving, and I am so excited to see this girl loves Jesus. I can't wait to see what God will do in and through her. Another cool story is Wasana. So Wasana's Thai. After I was discipling Linda and Kristen, I prayed, oh, God, please, will you bring me one more girl I can disciple? And I would be like, how about her? No. How about her? No. How about her? And I just felt like God wasn't right. And so I prayed for 6 months, and then I met Wasana. So I go to a Thai church, and so she was new, and so we just became friends. And I just met her. And then the next week we had a church camp. And so it was like a weekend of speaker break, activity break, and so on. And at each of the breaks, I would pray, okay, God, who do you want me to talk to? Every single time, it was Wasana. Everyone else was in a conversation already, but she was there. And so I would go up to her, and I talked with her, and she was in a fight with the friend who brought her to the church camp. And so I felt so terrible, but she would just go on and on and on about this fight with the friend. And I would just listen and listen and listen, and then I'd say, okay, let's pray about it, And then the next break would come, and I'd listen and listen and listen and say, okay, let's pray about it. And so that was it, the whole weekend. And I thought, did I hear you wrong? Was I supposed to have a spiritual conversation with her? I don't even know if she's a Christian, you know what I mean? But it's funny how God knows what we need. But the next week I saw her at church, and God said to me, right now, ask her if you can disciple her right now. And I'm like, okay. And so in my Thai English, I explain what discipleship is, and I ask her, and she stops, and she's like, Sam, I have literally been praying for weeks that God would bring me someone who could teach me how to tell people about Jesus. And I just think it's so cool. And so I'm like, awesome. And so the first day we go to hang out, and she goes, I'm thinking she's going to cancel for sure, you know. She goes, can I bring 3 friends? I was like, yeah. So she brings 3 friends. We had a 4th one join us later. And so this group of 5 of us just ended up meeting. And what's so crazy to me is, like, okay, so by God's grace and honestly a miracle, I led our group in Thai. And my Thai is conversational. If you want to hang out after church, I'll talk to you for a couple hours about small talk, the weather, food, your family. You know, I could hang out for a couple hours. But I cannot get to a heart level. Like I've studied all 3 years, and I'm not there yet. It's very hard language. And the fact that God could speak through me in Thai is insane to me. And it wasn't just for like 20 minutes. I mean, in Thai culture, it's very communal. So we would sit and talk for 4 or 5 hours. You know, that was our study. Every week we would meet for 4 or 5 hours. And if you didn't meet at least that long, then you didn't love them. And so 4 or 5 hours of Thai, like hard Thai. I mean, I would go home and just pass out. Like, I was so exhausted. But the fact that God could move in and through me is crazy to me. But it was very cool. And we saw so much fruit in that time. I mean, yeah. So, like, 4 out of the 5 of the girls had barely ever read their Bible before we even met. And after a couple weeks in, they were reading it every day. And, like, one of the girls, she says to me in Thai, of course, she's like, Sam, guess what? I read my Bible every day this week. Even Saturday. I was like, this is the first time she'd ever done that, you know? I'm like, that's awesome. You know, every week we would end with the prompt, what will you do this week, in response to a passage we read or a goal? And several weeks the girls would come back and they would share how they shared the gospel through our Bible lesson or through a parable of Jesus. I mean, it's very oral storytelling culture, and it was very cool to see how they would apply things that I wouldn't think of. You know, they would apply it in different ways. And honestly, I could cry thinking about all that God has done in that group. And 3 of the girls in the group, they struggled with same-sex attraction. And 2 of them were living together romantically, which I didn't know until after a group time, but that's how God had it. I found out later that 2 of the girls that were living together, they, just by being in the Word, just by reading in the Bible, like, we didn't even read a passage about homosexuality or anything. Just by reading the Word, they chose to break up and move out and to pursue their walk with the Lord. And I just think, like, God, it's just so cool to me that God could, like, he really speaks. You know, his Word is really alive and active. And, yeah, and they chose to change their lives accordingly. I think that's really cool. About 6 months into meeting, you know, the whole time I'd be like, okay, God, I want to teach this or this or this. And he'd say, no, just teach them how to read the Bible. And so for 6 months, we just learned how to read the Bible. And then 6 months later, most of the girls all moved away, and that was it. And so it was only me and Wasana. And Wasana, I would drive 40 minutes. I'd have our 5-hour Bible study / discipleship group. There's a cultural, and then Wasana would drive 30 minutes, and we'd meet at a food court, you know. And so everyone moved away, but Wasana, the next week after everyone moved, she moved 10 minutes from my house, right around the corner. And I just felt like God was like, focus on this one, you know. Yeah, it's been very cool. And as soon as we just kept meeting one-on-one, I mean, she was already growing, but in our one-on-one time, she began to grow so quickly. And it was very cool. She went from never reading her Bible to reading it every single day in large chunks of time. I mean, she loves it. It's always open when I come over. She'd share the gospel with everyone that she met. I mean, she goes on mission trips with her workplace. She actually quit her well-paying job in order to work at a nonprofit. That's how she felt God was leading her. And she didn't attend church before. Now she attends church regularly. We prayed about it, and she chose a church that's Thai and has sign language. And so she's learning sign language in order to minister to the deaf population that goes to this church. She's also going to another church in the afternoon, evenings, where she's been meeting with her boss. So she had quit her old job, and it's an older German couple. They are very atheist, and she has been loving on them. She has meals with them every week. She prays over their meals. Because they love her so much, they've let her share the gospel with them and pray, and she visits them in the hospital and picks them up from the airport. I mean, she really loves them. And so she decided to go to a German church in the evenings where she's learning German. And she said, Sam, I'm building a place for them, and that, you know, one day when they're ready, they're going to come to this church and they're going to come to know Jesus. And I just think, man, you know, it's inspiring to see her. I'm just so amazed at God's work in her life. I mean, in the last year, it's been very cool. I know that God will use her in huge ways simply because she's willing and obedient. And I'm so blessed to have played a part in her faith journey. I'm looking forward to what is in store for her next. So I want to switch. So those are a couple fun stories. I want to switch to the second thing I want to share with you today is about transition. So I don't think this gets shared very often, and so it's something I wanted to touch on. I honestly, as I look back about all that God has done and allowed me to be a part of, I just stand in awe. It's crazy how God could use someone as broken and messy as me. I will never understand, but I am so grateful. In my 5.5 years overseas, I've shared the gospel hundreds of times and saw dozens of people accept Christ. I spoke in front of great crowds and listened deeply in one-on-one discipleship times. I saw miracles happen before my eyes, and I felt the weight of spiritual warfare like 100 pounds on my shoulders weighing me down. I felt this rich depth of beautiful, close community that I couldn't have dreamed of. And I've also felt the pang of betrayal of a teammate and utter loneliness. I've met thousands of people and made dozens of amazing friendships, most of which live overseas. I've spent several hours praising God for his goodness and his provision, and I've spent hundreds of sleepless nights crying myself to sleep. I have been used in great ways by God, and I have failed in many ways also. In returning to America, right now I'm currently struggling with depression and anxiety. Sometimes I think as Christians we only share the good parts of our experience, or maybe we only share the hard things that we've already overcome. But I think it's more important to share what we're in the middle of struggling with. I think it's important because it takes the power away from the enemy. So I've had these disorders my entire life, but the symptoms are always magnified when I come home. Where do I belong? Will I ever find anything as big and purposeful as where I came from and what I've experienced? Will I successfully make friendships, or will I be socially awkward now? When will I feel normal? These and hundreds of other doubts and fears flood my mind as I think about starting over and creating a new life here in Ohio. Sorry, it's a little raw. I want to tell you a story that I think will help explain. Perhaps the story will resonate with you as well. All right. The story is called I Am a Triangle. It's a story about transition. I think the story will summarize transition and the great struggle it's been for me. I've taken this from Mission Training International, and I've created my own story to go along with it. I'm a teacher, so you'll have to bear with me for a second. Excuse me. I was born in my home country, the Blue Square country, and raised to dress and act and speak in a certain way. We hold certain values here that I rarely think about, but just do. This is all I have known my whole life, how to be a blue square like those around me. But then I leave for circle country. I fly over as a blue square, for again, that's all I know how to be. Here in the circle country, people are different from me, which is to be expected. Here, there are new ways to dress and eat and make friendships and speak. I learn new values, some of which I've never known before. I make sweet friendships that I never want to leave. I develop new views because of the life I live here. Perhaps I will live here forever and become a yellow circle, I think. But as hard as I try, I will never be a yellow circle, for I have always been a blue square. But slowly over time, without my even noticing it, I begin to change. I am no longer the blue square. I have added new experiences and friendships and values different from my home country, the blue squares. However, even though I can speak the language, I will never be a yellow circle either. For this is not where I was born, and I cannot understand this country the way the yellow circles understand it. So what am I? I'm not a blue square, and I'm not a yellow circle. I've become a green triangle, a mixture of who I was and who I am. of where I came from and where I've been. When God says it's time to leave my friendships and my home in the yellow circle country, I weep with great tears, for these are precious people to me now. On my return to my home country, the blue squares, I now return different from how I left. I have become a green triangle. When I see the blue squares, I now feel very alone, for I no longer see myself as a blue square. I find this country strange and scary and different. This is not expected, for shouldn't this feel like home? After all, it is where I was born. The other blue squares think I'm strange as well. Why are you not like you were before? They ask. I do not know the answer. Fear and judgment and loneliness fill my heart. I am so confused, and I do not know where I belong anymore. The good news is this. Jesus left his home country and all that he knew to enter into ours. He took on human form, becoming like us in every way, that we might know his great love for us. When I feel alone and like I do not belong here, wherever here may be, I remember that Jesus is a mixture of all cultures and colors and shapes, for he loves each country the same. Now I can use all the parts that make me a green triangle to help others who feel like they do not belong, to enter into the family of Jesus. For though we may be very different, we all belong in Jesus' country, where love and belonging abound and abound. I hope that story connects with you this morning. I wonder if some of you can identify with leaving home, maybe for college or a new job and starting over. Maybe you've seen God change you, and you can't find the words to communicate this change to those who knew you before. Wherever you're at today, I want you to know that whatever you've been through or whatever you've done, God sees you, and he loves you just the way you are right now. And remember, there's always room in God's family for someone just like you. The last thing I wanted to share with you this morning is honestly how it's just very truly all about God. The verse we just have been working on is that honestly through my weakness, which I'll share with you, Christ is made great, the Philippians 4:13. And so, let me say this first. I want to be vulnerable with you one last time this morning, that you might see that it truly is all about God. I just came from a debriefing training that Crew offers all returning missionaries. So in a room of 80 people, we had 26 countries represented and over 600 years of experience on the mission field overseas, which is pretty cool. These people, though mostly new faces, they're not strangers to me. They get it. They know what it is to feel happy and distraught in the same moment, to feel surrounded by those we love and completely alone at the same time. In the missionary world, we often talk about this paradox. It's how we can feel two or more very different emotions at the same time. I live here now in this paradox. At this training, they offered counseling, and in my session, I realized my greatest fear, which I will share with you today, my most vulnerable and terrifying fear is this, that I'm a failure, and I'll explain. While some people think that God made a mistake in choosing me, I think others put me on this pedestal, believing me to be some super Christian who can't fail. And it would be so easy for me to spend my whole life trying to live up to the view that some hold of me. But I believe God has something else for me to say here today. So while God has done amazing things, I could not tell you how many times that I've failed in the last 5.5 years. I've said the wrong thing. I've been prideful. I've forgotten to give God the glory and praise that he deserves. I've been impatient and quick-tempered and slow to forgive. I've been judgmental and bitter, and I've said, God, I'm too tired. I choose me today. I've missed quiet times, and I've put off Sabbath rest. Sorry. I'm flawed and broken and sinful and very far from perfect. My hope, I know it's terrible when people cry. My hope in sharing this with you today is this. In watching me step down from this pedestal that some believe I live on, that you might instead see me for just how truly sinful and human I am. By the miracle that's God's forgiving grace, I'm forgiven for all of my shortcomings. But I'm human, and I will continue to make mistakes. I hope that in seeing a glimpse of how messed up I am, and we could discuss this in detail for days, that you'll see just how truly amazing God is. Sorry. So, I know, I hate it too. Okay. All right, so I'm almost done, I promise. Every single person that accepted Christ, every disciple that's changed their life for Jesus, every life that's been transformed is only because people, wow, I love you. Great. It's just going to be mascara running down. I feel like it's fitting, don't you think? It just kind of goes with it. Anyway. All right. So let me say that again. Every single person that's accepted Christ, every disciple who's changed their life for Jesus, every life that's been transformed is only possible because of the power of God. Every Bible study that's inspired a love for the Word, every child who now feels safe and loved and known, God was there. Every good and perfect thing that I've ever known is because of God. I can truly do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But let us never forget that it's never, ever been about me, and it's always been about Him. So my last thing is, let's celebrate together some of the things that God's done the last few years. I'll just read them off. Okay, so I thought that would be closer to me. But I'll just read far away. So it's let me read this. Some things that God's done the last few years. So God allowed me to teach special education to students from 53 missionary families, all of which would have left the field had someone not been there to teach their kids. God generously gave me 7 girls to disciple, 2 teachers at Grace, GIS, and 5 Thai girls who experienced life transformation because of His life-changing power. God opened the eyes of one of my Thai students who I got to lead to Christ. God prompted me to pray about leading a Bible study for 3 years. God spoke through me and enabled me to lead a Bible study for missionary singles. Some of the girls wrote me cards afterwards and they just poured their hearts out and thanked me, and they said, "Sam, this was the greatest part of my year." Praise God for knowing the needs of this group. God gifted me with the chance to volunteer at a local Thai orphanage, which was a huge heart desire of mine, where I got to just love on kids who've been rescued from sex trafficking or been abandoned in their homes. By God's grace, I was fortunate enough to lead a prayer team. I led the prayer team on our team, my career team. God prepared me and moved in me as I helped lead high schoolers in evangelism outreaches to English-speaking tourists. That was cool. God directed me to mentor a handful of missionaries who were struggling to believe in God at all after what they've seen on the mission field. God is great. So my question, I'll leave you with this. I felt so humbled by Billy. I cried. Every time he speaks, I cry. But he's so good. But he's just here in that group, and it's just exactly what I'm talking about. You know, it's like the only reason God even used me is because I was willing. That's it. It could have been anyone else. So I think, what is He asking you to do today? If in any way my talk has hit your heart, I hope that you will give God the glory. If you are like me, you may have once thought that missionaries and church leaders were perfect and couldn't fail. I stand here today to tell you that's not true. If God has put missions on your heart, do not let the enemy tell you you're not good enough. Of course you're not. Neither am I. No one is. But if you're willing and obedient, He will use your simple, broken life in more ways than you could ever dream or imagine. So what is He asking you to do today? Thank you.